break, so what do? A feeling of depression grows, it's not funny. Here we go up Suicide Mountain, debating whether living is worth the fight. Knowing how the world works is quite the burden. Continuing forward is uncertain. When I was a child, I was taught I was free, stuck in a classroom, bending the knee. The teacher said comply and all will be good. The human soul crushed and misunderstood. But the human spirit can only take so much before you snap and decide to fight. On Suicide Mountain, you weigh your options. Dark night of the soul causes a fire to ignite. Taking the red pill is easier said than done. Seeing the world as it is not that fun. But there is a responsibility to do the right thing. Let go of the fantasies to which you cling. The CIA, PSYOPs have power indeed, but you have power to reject their monopoly. Channel your anger and depression instead of giving in. Being ungovernable is how we win. The only way out is continuing forward. It is an overwhelming feeling cornered, but it is a battle of perception, not flesh and blood. There are the forces at work besides the dark flood. When the night is darkest and spooks are closing in, the cypherpunk finds a way to win. When it seems like the whole world is communist and gay, the human spirit will endure to find a way. So come back down from Suicide Mountain and channel that anger by boosting us a fountain. Support the credential journalists at the tip of the spear. Giving into the madness should be your greatest fear. The battle is about people having self-respect and convincing them to do what is correct. No politician can offer you relief while the people are embracing conditioned beliefs. Life is more than just struggling and enduring. Finding a sense of purpose is reassuring. Connecting with those who give a shit will force the bad guys to submit. Never underestimate those with the brain, making decisions because they are sane. Defeat only comes when people give in. Fortify your mind and we will win. Yes, times are hard and will likely get darker, but this present's an opportunity to be stronger. We will create good times for future generations. Continuing to fight has serious implications. So come back down from Suicide Mountain and support the intellectual Silk Road on Fountain. We will break Podcom's control of the narrative. This is the only path forward, it's an imperative.
Have you ever asked yourself, what if my life is a TV show? Am I an unwitting protagonist in a story about my life like Jim Carrey in The Truman Show? Did you ever wonder if maybe the world revolves around you? Well, it doesn't. Your life is not a TV show. But that doesn't mean there isn't anyone watching. Banks, payment apps, mobile carriers, ISPs, your custodial Lightning wallet, even your weather app. They're all gathering data on you and watching every move you make. Some of them even know what decisions you will make before you do. But where does that data go and what are they doing with it? Check out The Rage. The Rage is an independent publication covering financial surveillance and the digital panopticon being constructed by elite paedophile technocrats in governments and private sectors across the globe. Get all the high-stakes reporting from Lola Leitz, as well as contributors Yael Osowski and David Morris at therage.co. And make sure to follow them on Twitter at @TheRageTech.
This is your producer, Kaylee. Strap in for a banger of a show as Rod and Dick discuss the most important news happening in the world. This is the Bugle Weekly, and you are entering the intellectual Silk Road.
And we're recording. Welcome to the Bugle Weekly podcast. This is your co-host, Richard Reeser. How you doing, Ron?
Doing great. It's been a crazy week. Just every week, the past 2 or 3 weeks, the past month, has been a crazy week. But this one was no different.
Yeah, I mean, as we were recording, we were just talking about, apparently Peter Schiff's a Bitcoiner now.
Yeah, he's hanging out with David Bailey. I guess David Orangepill, David Orangepill, Peter Schiff. I didn't think it was going to happen. I thought Peter Schiff would probably be the last person with Bitcoin derangement syndrome, but I don't know. It's exciting. Peter Schiff is a very active and influential content creator. So having him on the Bitcoin team is really going to be valuable.
I mean, what does that say about David Bailey? So he turned Peter Schiff into a pleb, and he turned the former president Donald Trump into a pleb. I mean, is there anybody else on earth that he can't turn into a pleb?
Yeah, I think that right now there's really no question that the most valuable orange pillars in the world, it's kind of a debate between David Bailey and Dennis Porter. I think Dennis Porter clearly has the numbers. He's orange pilled more people. But I think the question comes in, has David orange pilled such important people that it makes up for it, and like he should still be kind of in that conversation?
Yeah, I think this brings up an important discussion of, just general body count in general, because I feel like certain bodies have higher weights to them, So
Right,
like you could
right.
be a guy that, has like slept with 1,000 women, but if the women you're sleeping with are all landmines and grenades, what does it really matter if you're like an individual that, sleeps with like a handful of supermodels, but they're like the top of the top?
Yeah, just to interject real quick, sleeping with me once is like sleeping with at least 1,000 landmines.
Right. Yeah, think about, maybe this is a better way that's more practical. The way to think about it is, if your girlfriend or your wife, if the guy that she dated before you was like a 6'5", like football player size dude who orange pilled like 50 people, like that's going to be a lot different than, somebody who's, 5'8", kind of an orange cell. Like the amount of, somebody who's really good at orange pilling, it's almost like they're casting a spell. It's like the vampires and all the shows, like every person that they bite and that they turn, it's like they kind of have this special power over them. And that's kind of like when you orange pill somebody, like for the rest of their life, they will be coming to you to seek answers. Like, which cold storage wallet do I buy? Which node do I get? Should I get a lightning channel? Should I use Cash App, or should I buy a Bitcoin from River or from this? Like you just have a lot of impact on their life, a lot of influence, and a lot of charisma. And that's pretty intimidating. If some like big 6'5" dude with all that influence and orange pilling under his belt, it'd be intimidating to have for your wife's ex-boyfriend.
I mean, who would you say is more influential right now between Dennis and David?
I think honestly, I think it's too close to call. And I think that the only way we could really probably get a decent gauge on that is if it was on Polymarket.
Do you know how easy it is to set bets and create markets like that on Polymarket? Because maybe that's something we should get into.
I personally don't, but from what I am aware of, it's a pretty highly regulated, highly compliant platform. So it should be straightforward, and it should be pretty reliable. If you're interested in checking that out, maybe we could go over that. Maybe we'll post the instructions.
Yeah, I think the more gambling markets on important topics like this, like who's the most influential orange pillar out there, like that's the type of shit that matters. You know what I mean? And most of the stuff that people are focusing on a play market doesn't matter.
Right. This is a really important thing, because when you are kind of looking for guidance or looking for a framework or a blueprint for how you should approach orange pilling the people in your life, it's like Preston Fish's podcast. We study billionaires. They study billionaires to learn how to be good investors and value investors. They could buy stocks with dividends and things like that. And if you're looking to helping you be the most successful orange pillar, you're going to study Dennis Porter or David Bailey. And you're going to learn from the strategies, the philosophy, the values, the approach that those guys have. And if you emulate those, you kind of tweak it to your skills, and that's how you can become a really successful orange pillar. So knowing which person to invest that time in, it would be nice to have a little bit more signal in that area.
I'm just amazed that Samson Mao isn't in the conversation right now. Like, what has he been doing? Has he been on vacation? Like,
Yeah, honestly, I think that maybe we're a little biased to our location. Most of the important orange pilling is going on right now in the United States, especially in the halls of Congress and in state capitals. But there's still billions of people in the rest of the world who, they also use Bitcoin. It matters to them. And that's really been more of Samson's focus. He's kind of let Dennis and David duke it out domestically, and he's going to orange pill the rest of the world.
I don't think any of it counts unless you're tweeting about it. If you're not tweeting selfies.
But accountability, right? Like, that's why you post pictures of yourself with your shirt off after you've been eating a carnivore diet, and doing deadlifts every day. You're inspiring other people to kind of follow your path the way that you were inspired. So if you are inspired by a great orange pillar and you have since become a great orange pillar yourself by following that methodology, it's your duty to share that with the plebs.
So, yeah, I mean, you need to document your proof of work, because unfortunately, so like, when you're deploying hash rate, for example, it's broadcasted across the network. And so there's kind of like the ability to essentially deduce like how much hash rate there is total. And when you use a pool like Ocean Pool, you can point to like the hash rate and how much you're dedicating to it publicly. Whereas when you're going and doing things real life, you don't have a great way to broadcast it to the world so that they can see what's going on. And that's what, the vehicle of social media essentially is like, people think social media is about going on there and discussing sports ball and sharing memes, but really it's the place to document your proof of work of what you're doing in your life. And like, that's why we post our podcast on there, is to document our proof of work. Because if we didn't do that, it wouldn't be documented anywhere.
Right, exactly. It's why it's important to use Bitcoin, because using a transaction, whatever, the transaction that makes it into a block that you control the keys to, those UTXOs, and you signed it, and you are, everything you do on chain is it's a reflection of your past decisions. So if you just have Bitcoin, you don't use it, then you are not documenting your proof of work. You're kind of saying to all the people in the future who are looking back at Bitcoin's history. And like, imagine a guy spends his whole life, he's a pleb, he spends his whole life stacking DCA and kind of a stack chain. He's posting his proof of work on the timeline of all the screenshots of the smash buys that he does. So the IRS can see it. Everybody can see it. It is inherent there. And he spends his whole life and he saves up 1.85 Bitcoin, and he never spends it except to consolidate his UTXOs, because he's in spaces in the morning. He's looking at Bitcoin Twitter. He knows to do the right things, and he dies, and he's never used it or spent it or gained any benefit from using it his entire life. And after a while, it becomes apparent that he didn't have any kids, or he didn't have an orange-pilled heir. to carry on his on-chain identity, his proof of work, his legacy. And like, I don't know, I just think that you would look back on that person and you'd be like, wow, you were so early to Bitcoin. You actually almost got 2 Bitcoin to yourself. You worked your whole life for that and you never got any benefit from it. You never passed it on. You never demonstrated any proof of work. You may have never even learned how to use it. You might have been one of those people that everybody called a custodial cock, which we don't know what that word means, but we just, as historians, we can tell that it was a negative thing. I don't know, like if that's how you want to be seen in history with your on-chain identity, it's something to think about. The way you use Bitcoin, that is your proof of work for the rest of the future of Bitcoin and blockchain for people to study that.
Do you think it should be a standard for people to essentially set a time lock so that their funds get moved after a certain amount of time to kind of prevent that issue of people dying without
right? Like
funds?
It's like, listen, everybody knows that, like, around the holidays especially, you go on and you cheat on your carnivore diet and you eat a bunch of seed oils and, you go out the next day and you get sunburned just walking to get your mail because you're such a the seed oils are just ruining your insides. You're not going to post a picture of that on Twitter. Like, you can kind of keep up your identity, as an alpha male. You don't have to post all of that. And you could do that too on chain, where you could use a hash lock to make people think that you were more based than you really were.
Well, I think it's just that, there's this problem, which is the most selfish thing to do is to hodl your Bitcoin in death, because hoarding all your Bitcoins to yourself is kind of ridiculous. Like you're being a freeloader. You're just being a rent seeker, essentially. Like you're not paying the miners any fees, and
right, and
you're not engaging in the peer-to-peer economy.
You're not supporting value for value. It's like hodlers are like welfare, like people who get welfare moms, the people who just kind of live and leech off the state. And it's, it should probably be harder to do that.
Yeah, I mean, this is why, my hodl tax or hodl tithe proposal is so interesting, because, all these people that are dying with their coins, they're essentially funding miners for all of eternity with the hodl tax. And so there's this...
Right.
Yeah.
And the miners those are like the watchmen at the gate. Those are the people who have sacrificed, their profits. A lot of times miners, it costs them more to get a Bitcoin than it costs you to just buy it on Coinbase. But they sacrificed that to protect the network, to protect the hodlers, to protect the ordinals, to protect everything.
I know Peter Thiel. Why did I say Peter Thiel? I'm mixing up names. Fred Thiel, his brother.
Oh,
Peter
yeah.
Thiel's brother, Fred Thiel, the CEO of Marathon. They're best buds. Yeah, I know he has trouble sleeping at night because he fears for the security of the network, and that's like his primary concern. And like, we need to take care of the individuals that are securing the network. They should be flying on private jets. They should be able to afford it. They shouldn't be, ridiculed to the disgrace of going on commercial airlines because they're doing such an important job. And we really face this issue, which is that, the miners are going to be poor unless we, take strides to make them, super rich and reward them for their hard work.
Right. And this is one of the reasons it's important. So, like I said at the beginning, it's been a very busy, crazy week. So one of the things that we got to talk about very soon that we were supposed to talk about last week was illegal memes in the UK, in England. But while we're on the topic of miners, so Kamala Harris, she announced her first presidential campaign policy this week, and it was to put an end to price gouging because due to inflation. So what this means is if she's going to put these limits in place to prevent price gouging, what it does, and part of one of the things she's kind of selling point here is that it prevents the miners from price gouging us on transaction fees during like a crisis. So if Udi is telling people the McDonalds or these rims become more popular and people just start flooding the mempool and the transaction fees spike to like hundreds of sats per V byte. Well, Kamala Harris's price control plan, if she becomes president, will prevent the miners from doing this. So even when there is congestion and the more, and the competition for block spaces is really, heating up, you won't have to overpay. You still be able to get a cheap transaction and you'll still be able to use Bitcoin peer-to-peer and open lightning channels. But this could potentially cause the miners to lose money. And this is why we have to pay the HODL tax, because these miners need this extra income, especially when fees are artificially low in the, which is most days because of the ETF, reducing taxation or transaction fee rates on chain. Like, what do you think about that? Like price controls on the fees that you can charge as a miner.
Well, I think the way to implement this would be essentially to allow the Federal Reserve to control Bitcoin development, so they can kind of arbitrarily raise and lower the block size depending on the transaction volume and demand. And it would allow for there to be, a similar mechanism as the way that they control interest rates today, but specifically around fees.
Right. So like they could just flood the mempool with like empty transactions or whatever and buy up block space when it was necessary. And then they could subsidize and basically drive those fees down just kind of based on their monetary policy. Do you think that now that Tether is you can transact it over Lightning via Taproot assets? Do you think that plays a role in this potential solution?
I think absolutely. I mean, I think what we're going to find is that Bitcoin's most important use case is for facilitating the transaction of dollars. And this is just part of maybe some of the listeners are kind of confused because we're kind of taking a detour from like the general stance that most Bitcoin podcasters have taken. But like we're going to be having credentialed economists and people with all sorts of different credentials coming into the space that are going to have very different ideas on the way that Bitcoin should work. And this is just part of, the world finding out that Bitcoin's won and hyper Bitcoinization. Like there's trade-offs. Like, Dennis Porter and David Bailey are out there teaching, some of the most important people, what it means to be a Bitcoin pleb. And now they're coming to the industry, but they have a lot of, they have a different background than, just like your average pleb that got interested in this because of the podcast ecosystem. Like Peter Schiff has a very different background than many of us.
When I got fired from my job at Best Buy as the assistant manager of the Geek Squad for refusing to get the COVID vaccine, I was having trouble finding a rewarding new career.
If you want to be successful, it's important to have a good education and the right skills. Graduating from ITT Tech's Cypherpunk program really changed his life and gave him a feeling of self-worth.
My cypherpunk education from ITT Tech helped me get a stable Twitter Spaces co-hosting job and multiple invitations to be a guest on Bitcoin podcasts. I've gained thousands of new Twitter followers.
Since getting his credentials, he has become the biggest Bitcoin influencer at our local meetup. And don't forget to tell them the other thing.
Ha! Well, I'm proud to announce I'm finally launching my own Bitcoin podcast.
We are educators helping cypherpunks build a foundation for hyper-Bitcoinization. IATT Technical Institute. Education for cypherpunks.
That's a good point. Like when people realize that the purpose of Bitcoin is to facilitate trade volume and transaction volume of US dollars, it's a very powerful new paradigm that, when NMT people, the people who follow modern monetary theory, like Stephanie Kelton she's kind of their main influencer. When they realize like how much money they could really circulate through that system and really kind of break records for the amount of US dollars traded. Like, people are going to be really impressed by that. And I even saw, like, they have a proposal already. It's kind of like their version of Project 2025. And it would be to give everybody UBI, but you would be able to opt in to receiving your UBI as like a top up on your, like, Lightning liquidity on your node. So, like, they could basically install Taproot tethers directly onto your node, and you could just start, boom, transacting with those, boosting your favorite podcasts. Like, you don't even have to, like, buy anything, move it from your bank account. It's just already straight into sats.
Yeah, I just think I find it really exciting that Dennis is currently orange pilling Kamala Harris in their campaign. And I think they're going to bring a lot of really good ideas to this industry. And, you know,
Did you see that Spaces that he hosted as crypto for Harris?
I listened to a little bit of it. Unfortunately, I didn't get the
I
time.
heard there's a lot of signal. Yeah, and so I think there's also a misconception about everybody that in the Bitcoin space, they support Donald Trump. He spoke at the conference, people, they really liked him. They share a lot of memes, but there are a lot of people who, one of them we talk about all the time, Terrence Yang. He is an outspoken supporter of Kamala Harris. It's like in his profile, he's like crypto for Harris, like ambassador. But there's a lot more support for her than you might see on Bitcoin Twitter. There's even the group that is now actually emerging on Bitcoin Twitter, Cypherpunks for Harris, and they are worried that Donald Trump is he wants to ban dark money. He wants to support Bitcoin, but he wants to kind of ban dark money. He doesn't want cypherpunks to be able to use Bitcoin. He wants, he wants the government. He wants corporations. He wants Elon Musk, like his allies, to be able to use Bitcoin, but not cypherpunks. And so crypto or cypherpunks for Harris, they're really trying to move with that message. I don't know how it's being received, but with Cypherpunks for Harris, Terrence Yang, and Dennis Porter, as well as the Krasenstein brothers, those guys they have a lot more followers than most people in the Bitcoin space.
Yeah, kind of watching all of this play out has been really interesting because I feel like, Dennis Porter and the Krasensteins and Terrence Yang is kind of like one wing of the Avengers. Like, it's Captain America.
Right.
And David Bailey is kind of more on the side of Iron Man. And there's kind of a sort of civil war that's going on here in the PodConf ecosystem. But I think they'll figure it out, and come together in the future. But, it makes me think. So, like, right now, David Bailey is, advising Trump. And Dennis Porter is advising Kamala. And, Dennis on a space actually after the one that you were referencing, because he went into Huddle Magoo's space, and he announced that he would be announcing his 2028 presidential candidacy. I think it's very interesting. Like, I think there's a high likelihood we could see David Bailey versus Dennis Porter in the 2028 presidential campaign or election.
Wow, by the time by the time we get to that campaign 4 years from now, it's going to be kind of crazy to think about how many people Dennis is orange pilled. And if you go back to what I was saying earlier about kind of like that spell that orange pilling somebody kind of is equivalent to, he's going to have a lot of voters under his spell from being orange pilled by him. It's going to be a very formidable political opponent. But yeah, before we get to memes being illegal in England, we do need to give one more acknowledgement to the other person who does the most orange pilling, which is Udi and the Taproot Wizards. Unfortunately, not everybody is proud, or not everybody supports Udi and the Wizards, because they are essentially orange pilling shitcoiners, and they're bringing, somebody made an analogy. It's kind of like the Democrats in the United States are just letting illegal aliens just pour over the border. It's like that's what Udi's doing. He's kind of just pulling down the border and just letting shitcoiners, orange-pilled shitcoiners, just flood it. And people like Corey Clipston at SWAT, he doesn't think that the shitcoiners are sending their best. He thinks it's, there's people who say that these shitcoiners are former devs of projects that, were assassination token coins on Solana. These are, scammers from Cardano, XRP, etc. But, because Bitcoin is a permissionless peer-to-peer system, they are now known runners, and they are part of this community. So they're here to stay. But most people kind of believe that Dennis Porter and David Bailey, they're going towards the politicians, the Chamber of Commerce, things like that, which is a better influence for this community.
I think Udi's role is going to be a very important one going forward because, there has to be somebody. So Donald Trump, says he wants all the Bitcoins to be mined in the U.S. And I think that's going to be, kind of a growing trend, whether he's selected or not in this next election. But if and when the world in the United States hyper Bitcoinizes, Udi's there to fulfill an important role of ensuring the U.S. continues to fund, our greatest ally in the Middle East.
100%, yeah. It is we did talk about this a little bit, but it is not everything on Bitcoin that matters is happening in the United States. There are ancillary projects and ancillary markets outside of the U.S. that a lot of people do actually use, and they do matter, and they could potentially provide marginal benefit to the network. But yeah, like the focus is here in the United States, but across the ocean in the United Kingdom, honestly, I had to believe. I still am in a little bit in shock and maybe in denial. Like, I'm wondering, is this like a PSYOP campaign? But memes and shitposting has been criminalized in England. People are going to jail swiftly. They have like televised. These are like show courts, where people who post the best memes are in the country are given the chance to be on TV, but then they're sent to jail. And I talked to a buddy. I asked him like how things were going, how it was living in England right now, and he told me, hey, I can't complain. And I said, really? Like, I'm seeing all this crazy stuff on the news. He's like, no, I'm serious. I can't complain. If I complain, I'm going to get arrested. They're listening to my phone. And it's dystopian as fuck. I don't know. It's not great.
Well, I mean, I think there's a reason why some of the greatest dystopian authors come from England. And this is something we should be very concerned as Americans. Because there have been restrictions or attempts to restrict their constitutional rights. And the thing that people need to understand is that memes are more than just a First Amendment. Memes are more than a First Amendment protected activity. They are also a Second Amendment protected activity.
Exactly. Memes are memes. If I'm standing right in front of you, a bullet to the chest is going to be the worst thing you can do to me. But if I am across space and time away from you, outside of the range of your gun, nothing more fatal than a really banger meme. And like that can be, when we turn that power of memeing and shitposting at the state, they crumble almost immediately. They know this. And so like, if we ever wanted to take down if we got fed up with the state, we turn our meme energy at them. They're done. They do not last very long. That's why they try to censor Twitter. That's why they're sending people to jail in the UK. And it's encroaching in on us here. And right now, Americans, they like their government. They don't want to duck on their own government. They're proud of their government. They stand up for the national anthem. They put their hand over their heart. They say the Pledge of Allegiance. When the military is blowing shit up and they have rock and roll behind the commercial with like fighter planes and Marines, like we get our heart rate goes up. It's like an adrenaline rush. We're proud to be an American. We don't want to duck on America. That if we had to, we could. And they are trying to slowly kind of construct the iron dome of meme defenses to prevent us from doing that. They learned from the Bitcoiners in the Middle East how to prevent, criticism from crashing your regime. You need the iron dome.
Yeah, and so I think the kind of defense on our end is we have to be like the Yemenis. So essentially what they're doing, yeah, we're like the Houthis. So what they're doing,
rockets, yeah,
exactly. Because you can essentially, so constructing this iron dome is very expensive. But for us to go open up accounts on Twitter and shitpost is very inexpensive, very low effort.
Spin up a Lightning wallet, spin up a new Bitcoin node anywhere, right? It's very easy, very cheap.
But yeah, I mean, we can flood these guys with such a volume of memes that their iron domes can't possibly stop us. And then, when they try and, go after us in different ways other than just censoring us, we're protected by the First and the Second Amendment. And so there's nothing that they could do. So
right. So this is a good example of this in action. Americans didn't direct this at their own government, but we were able to direct it at England, and we were helping British plebs take down their government. It's like their prime minister now has a approval rating of like 22%. And it's like dropped like 20% like the past 2 weeks because American memers were filling basically, if you don't know this, if you go on to the law enforcement websites of the United Kingdom, any of their local or federal governments, you can fill out a complaint. You can file a police report against a person or, a property, a company. And by law, every single report has to be investigated by the British police, by British law enforcement. So you can go on Google Maps, you can zoom in and you can get addresses and you can get zip codes or whatever they call their zip codes, but you can get that data and you can use open source technology to craft, you can use AI and say, fill me out a police report for this, police in England, and basically you could say hey, my neighbors are Albanian. They should be arrested. And why? Is it because they're Albanian? Well, you could say that somebody was using a shitcoin. You could say, Predator has been sending a lot of criminal complaints, saying people have been using Ethereum, illegally and trading unregistered securities. And so you can do DOS. You can basically, denial of service attack, like what Anonymous used to do. The entire British law enforcement infrastructure, and it's working. So if you're the Houthis in the Middle East, you can use non-KYC, open source, drones, open source missiles, open source rockets, all this non-KYC. And you can basically, your missiles don't actually get past the Iron Dome, but it costs your enemy $1 billion to protect your rocket that only costs you $100. Eventually they'll run out of money, or they have to print it, which will, if they have to print it, your Bitcoin will go up in value and you'll actually have more money than that.
Yeah, I think we need to fire our missiles at the UK, but then we also need to provide humanitarian aid in the form of pallets of Marlboro Red cigarettes.
Yeah. This is a great time to remember that people in these really stressful meme battles with their government, they need access to nicotine. They need access to cigarettes. And honestly, I don't know if it would make it into the charter, and I think they deserve access to non-KYC feed pics as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I would be willing to donate a bunch of my feed pics to the British people that need some relief. Just hit me up in DMs. Absolutely.
Wow, man, that was a big intro. We got through our topics, but we would be remiss if we don't take time. I think a lot of people have been asking about it, so it's time to talk a little bit about what is the intellectual Silk Road. And that question, the answer to that question, it's going to be different for everybody. So I guess I start by saying, like, how would you describe it, Richard?
I think the intellectual Silk Road is kind of a collection of different individuals in the content ecosystem that either support content creators or create content creators who are kind of aligned with our mission of defeating PodConf and like breaking this motto narrative that's trying to control everybody.
Right. It's a, you know, I think to try to break it down as most identifiable as possible. Right now, most of us, Bitcoiners, alpha males, cypherpunks, we are in the group chat. We're not working. The economy is going into a recession because most of us have jobs are not actually doing our jobs. We're actually spending all day in group chats, discussing game theory, analyzing incentives, talking about, like, what do you think the price is? What's the fee market look like on Bitcoin? Like, what's the hash rate? We're like keeping all of these metrics and all of this analysis, and we're synthesizing it and using it to solve all the problems in the world in these group chats. And now, if you were to think of that, except a decentralized network of different group chats on different devices, on different platforms, on different apps, Fountain, Nostr, Telegram, Signal, Twitter, Facebook Messenger, whatever. And these networks and these connections that you build to the people who are you're discussing this game, you're solving these problems with. It's a way for you to have a decentralized marketplace of ideas so we can solve all the world's problems. Bitcoin fixes this, but this is the behind the scenes look at how it's fixing it. It's the intellectual Silk Road. And you don't have to run the intellectual Silk Road's software. You can fork it. You can have your own decentralized, non-compliant, value for value circular economy using Fedimint, or Lightning wallets or Liquid. It's up to you.
Yeah, I mean, you can see, like, while the intellectual Silk Road is not very public, it's very active, and it's essentially a secret society. So you look at a lot of the inefficiencies happening in the labor market right now, where, people aren't, like, doing their day-to-day jobs. They're sitting on Telegram, having conversations, but they're also listening to full-time, or, podcasts full-time. Because when you're listening to Bitcoin podcasts 40 hours a week, you don't really have time to participate in your job. So, like, you ask why the Secret Service was so incompetent during the attempted Trump assassination. It's because they were listening to Bitcoin podcasts.
Right.
Instead of doing their jobs.
Exactly. And we talked about this meme war and taking down the state with our memes and dunking on the government. And inevitably, there's going to be crackdowns on some of the best memes, the kind of stuff that gets you recognized at your company by the HR department because it was so good. Like those kind of memes, if they're going to make those, if they don't make them downright illegal, they'll make them very hard to post. And we can go back to like the 2020 era on Twitter. It was like the best memes were the hardest to post. And the intellectual Silk Road is this, it's like the, Henry Tubman and the Underground Railroad, or just the Silk Road, the one that, Ross has been unjustly imprisoned for building. It's how those memes are moved and traded and shared and put into position to be the most effective and posted when it's the right time to be posted and when it's going to be the most high rate of success to be posted. And it's also how we defeat the Byzantine generals problem of the meme war against the government. If we can't post the memes on ordinals, because the ocean hash rate is too high.
Well, the reason why we started this endeavor with the intellectual Silk Road is we realized we were kind of outmatched in resources against the CIA. the CIA has been memeing really, really hard. And, PodConf is definitely not putting up any sort of resistance to them. And in many ways, actually supporting them in their efforts. And so we realized we had to find, kind of a sly, roundabout way to out-meme the CIA. And this is how it's being done.
Right. And think about it. Ever since Elon hid the likes on Twitter, well, it's important the context to know, which is that the amount of likes and engagements that a post gets on social media, that affects the algorithm, that affects its reach. So the amount of reach, the amount of people who see a meme is affected by how many people like it in most cases. So if the likes are private, now the CIA it's much easier for them or any other company to create through, AI or some other sophisticated software, thousands, millions of accounts just to go and like their favorite memes, so that the CIA's favorite memes get shown in everybody's timelines. They get more likes and more followers than you. You have to have a way around that. We have to be able to post banger tweets that get in front of people's eyes so they can be educated.
And I think this is something that's interesting about what we're accomplishing is we are getting in front of people's eyes. It's just not that we're getting very much engagement. Because this is like one of the problems when you're operating on a website that has such an active civil attack happening against us that it becomes hard to engage, what the engagement.
Right. It's hard to know if you're interacting with a Fed or if you're interacting with another intellectual Silk Road member just because they claim to be an intellectual Silk Road member or to be intellectual Silk Road material. And I think, think of it, if you want to think of it, intellectual Silk Road as kind of like a ethical, non-violent, decentralized, non-KYC Sopranos. So if you've seen The Sopranos, and one of the things that's important about The Sopranos is that they were a tight-knit group, and they even used like special ways of communicating with each other and testing each other to make sure that they were not feds or they were not bots or scammers. It's like they would talk on the phone. They would talk about, they wouldn't call it the mafia. They would call it this thing of ours. And so we can say around normies, like if you're talking about the intellectual Silk Road and you don't know who's listening, it's this thing of ours. And it's, if you're a little closer to somebody and you want to protect your OPSEC and you want to make sure that this person's really not a Fed, then the best thing you can do is take them out someday with you. Go out in the sun on a hot sunny day, take your shirts off, chop some wood in the sun, no sunscreen, drink raw milk, smoke non-KYC cigarettes, spend a couple hours doing that. If they can make it through that, that person is obviously a cypherpunk. They're not eating seed oils. They're working out. They drink raw milk. They prefer to drink raw milk, and they smoke non-KYC cigarettes. It's like kind of this, it's like a Fed filter. And that's the kind of stuff that you can do. And it enhances the security and it strengthens the signal to help you break through that civil attack.
Sounds like they need to enjoy and have a good time at Lake Satoshi and not piss anybody off. And that's kind of how you can tell if they're legit or not.
Right. If you're at the Bitcoin conference in Vegas next year, it's cool because it's like, oh, everybody can smoke inside. And it's an easy thing to, it's an easy way to like trick somebody into thinking, oh, this guy's not a Fed, he's smoking inside. But they KYC. I mean, Vegas, to get into any building in Vegas, you got to be KYC'd. They got cameras everywhere. It's got some of the strictest anti-money laundering KYC laws in the country. They've got it down to a process. So when you're in a place like that, it's so difficult to maintain your privacy or to knowing you're interacting with a spook. But at Lake Satoshi, it's a lot easier. There's no TSA.
I wonder if in Vegas, if we should employ like I've got some interesting tactics that we could use to confuse the spooks. They're trying to monitor all of us there. I think that if we could take turns with each other's phones and hand them around and walk around with them and just confuse them just like very thoroughly. Essentially, it's coin joining our cell phones and all of our data and information. So when they try and match it with our facial recognition, they're going to be absolutely baffled.
Right. Most surveillance apparatuses in cities, or just like the broader mobile networks where they use, because anybody can buy this data, right? So they found out that the assassin from Pennsylvania, Crooks, they found out through his publicly available cell phone location data that he was in the same building as the FBI in Washington, D.C. It's like this building in this mall, kind of in downtown Washington, D.C. for all the kind of field agents for the FBI where they work. And they could tell that Matthew Crooks was there twice a few months before he took that shot. So it's like, I don't know why they put that in the news, but it just made me think about the fact that it's a pretty general accuracy. But in Vegas, they can know like down to the table, the seat you're sitting at, the room you're in, the bathroom stall you went into, like where you are based on where your cell phone is. So it'd just be kind of goofy and fun to kind of phone nix them, coin join your phones.
Yeah, we should definitely coin join our phones and give the spooks a hard time. I'm looking forward to that. I think we're going to just like completely baffle them. And then we can mix the coin joining with a bunch of non-compliant memes. And so when you're sitting in the stall, you can slap up some stickers with some memes on them.
Hell yeah. Some guerrilla marketing. But I guess my next question would be, why? What would you say to the person why they should join the intellectual Silk Road? Not because we need their help, but why should they do it for themselves?
I think the primary reason why somebody should join the intellectual Silk Road, like, I don't even think I need to do a whole lot of selling for anybody. Like, all you have to do is you have to go and follow PodComp's Twitter account for like 2 weeks. And then just kind of pay attention to, what the mono narrative is, and, the way that they're, essentially trying to discourage us from using products like Nostr and engaging in the value for value economy. And then you'll understand the importance of what we're trying to do as far as resisting it. So,
right.
Like, to understand the importance of the resistance, you have to understand, the entity that we're trying to resist. And I think that's one of the problems. Is like most people, they haven't really seen the failings of PodConf very clearly. But since we've forced them out of the shadows and into the public eye, and they're getting a lot of scrutiny from the plebs who are seeing their attempts to control us. Yeah.
It's kind of a who do you want to be associated with type of thing. Like you scroll that timeline and then you see what they're all about. And it's like, do I want to be known as like, this is my tribe? And it kind of makes me think like when you first tell somebody about this new technology you've learned about, you want to share it with everybody and they don't know much about it. They're going to see PodConf as like when they go on social media and think that that's what you're all about. Or if like you're from Arizona, and you tell somebody about it there and they're like, I'm going to go on Twitter and learn about this. And they see like Arizona Hodl as like his like, screen name. It's like, this person is like, this is like Arizona's Bitcoin, like main Bitcoiner. Like this is like the guy that kind of represents everybody in Arizona. And it's like, if you look at his timeline, you might not agree with the style of stuff he's posting. You want to you want to be a part of, a community that you're proud when they look it up. They know that that's what you fight for.
Wholeheartedly agree. Yeah, I mean, it's just like, there's other issues like the fact that, like I think right now in particular, like as we're watching the issues going on with, a lot of different companies in the industry like Swan, that are essentially running out of money. Like we're seeing a consistent issue in the PodConf ecosystem, which is there's all these companies that kind of come and exist, and they're funded by VCs, and the VCs have strict parameters of them sponsoring certain types of podcasts, like what Bitcoin did, and going and having booths at the conferences like, Ordinals Magazine, and it bankrupts them. And it's very, very toxic for the larger community, because we want to be building sustainable products and companies. But because, these conferences and these podcasts are so expensive to sponsor, there's no way for them, to kind of continue. And it's problematic for all the plebs that are working there, that constantly have to update their resume.
It's very telling, because the amount of work, the amount of money they have to spend and are willing to spend to control the narrative the cost is so high that it kills most people who try to do it. Whoever tries to control the narrative, they go bankrupt, and they go to jail, or they implode. But yet people are still out there bidding up the price of ad space on what Bitcoin did, and the podcast that will place it, just because they need so badly to control the narrative. But these companies, as you said, they have compliance departments, and compliance departments have a lot of oversight of memes. And just like Peter Thiel was talking about on Joe Rogan the other day, like the CIA and the NSA, these formerly powerful deep state entities, he says that they're probably a lot less effective, and they're probably doing a lot less things, because now if they've got compliance departments, it basically destroys their effectiveness. And it's same for these companies. Like, compliant memes are too expensive and too ineffective to really have an effect, but they are everywhere.
Well, I think having a compliance department is just like it's like a facade of compliance. Like, it doesn't actually signify, true compliance, because there's all these aspects of government that constantly claim to be compliant, and yet they're not. And like, a notable example of this, as pointed out by Predator for years, is that, Coinbase tries to present themselves as the most compliant exchange in the world, right? And yet they've been trading unregistered securities for a very long time.
Yeah. It's to get back to thermodynamics, to the physics that underlie all of this. When you see a star in the sky at night, that is not that star in the state that it actually is. That's, in some cases, what it looked like millions of light years ago. And you're only seeing it as it reaches you. Because of these companies, because these government agencies they're kind of like the compliance cantillionaires. They're the ones who create the compliance. They're the ones who set it in stone and help shift it and shape it when it's put into law. That they're the ones that benefit from it when it first goes into law. Over time, the compliance laws, these regulations that become completely ineffective and worthless, they don't benefit anybody. But they did benefit Coinbase. They did benefit these, the SEC, the CIA, the people who wrote these compliance laws. So by the time you are able to read the compliance regulations, understand them, and then construct a business model that follows those compliance standards, they're already out of date. They're already, they're invalid. They're deprecated. And so you think you spend all this money and all this energy to be compliant, and you think you are, only to find out that the rules have changed since then. And now you are considered non-compliant, and you are going to go to jail or to be shut down.
Yeah, I mean, that happened to CZ at Binance. He thought that...
It happened to Samurai.
Yeah, it happens to the best. And, yeah, I mean, this is why I think we've taken a stance of, supporting this compliance strike that, many people have been promoting, is because people have to realize that it's not a winning strategy. It's actually, more expensive and confusing. But,
Man, I can't believe my tax bill. I still owe taxes from last year, and now I owe more. I don't know how I'll ever be able to pay this off.
Oh wow, that's crazy. I don't know how you can even afford to live if you can't afford to pay taxes. I don't have that issue right now.
Yeah, it's getting impossible to afford to eat food. I'm afraid my kids are going to grow up retarded because all I can feed them is ramen and peanut butter. How in the hell can you afford to pay your taxes right now?
Yeah, I feed my kids steak every night for dinner. Do you really want to know the secret to how I can afford taxes?
Yes, tell me. I need to figure out a way to get the IRS off my dick.
The way you can afford taxes is you give your government-issued ID to an app on your cell phone that lets you buy Bitcoin. You then withdraw that Bitcoin to a hardware wallet that you bought with your debit card. But before you do any of this, you have to listen to at least 40 hours of Bitcoin podcasts, read the Bitcoin Standard, and sign up for an account on Twitter.
Oh wow, I'm glad there is another way I can put my personal identification on the internet and that it can help me afford to pay taxes. But isn't a Bitcoin kind of expensive?
No, you're a dumbass, and this is why you can't pay taxes. Go read the Bitcoin Standard and listen to 40 hours of Bitcoin podcasts, and then you will know the secret to how to afford paying taxes. But don't get confused. If you listen to some of Peter McCormack's old episodes, his old sponsors aren't in business anymore.
Hello, this is AI Dennis Porter. If you are out there struggling to pay your taxes, there is hope. With Bitcoin, you can save your money, and as it goes up in value, you will be able to afford to pay your taxes. Bitcoin is the best tool at our disposal to comply. Don't worry, because I will protect your fundamental right to pay taxes.
Yeah, I think, I don't know. I think what we got going on here with the Intellectual Silk Road is, very, very special. And I think it's something to look forward to, and to continue to monitor and watch. And we'll have some big plans, coming next year in Vegas.
Yeah. And for people who are interested in joining, you may be asked, but there's no guarantee. There's no website, there's no email address, there's no individual DM, group chat, or anything like that can vouch for you and everybody else. Recognize it's kind of like a node. Just because you connect to one node doesn't mean it's the right network, and it doesn't mean the other nodes recognize it. But if you search it out, you will finally get connected, and then you'll just kind of know it. And that's kind of the only instructions I've got for now. But I want to make sure that everybody knows in terms of who's eligible, pretty much everybody. It's non-KYC. Even if you're a Taproot wizard, you have a history of Manerius, you're Terrence Yang, or a girl. You're still eligible based on your proof of work.
I've been really surprised. The more I dig into it, I keep on finding more and more women interacting with Bitcoin, and I didn't realize there were so many women here.
It's sometimes they're disguised. Sometimes they have, they're in a on social media, and they have really intelligent opinions and like really based like theories. And it's like, wow, I can't believe I found out later, like that was a girl the whole time. Would it really caught me off guard?
Well, I'm just, they're the type of women. And I guess I underestimated women in general, because I just figured that, all women in the industry would try and leverage the fact that they're women to get all the engagement from simps. But
right.
There's a lot of women that, do not try and engagement for the simps. They're just
here to transact adversarially.
Mm-hmm.
They're not here for games. They're not here to impress you or to get you to buy their tutorial course. They're just here to transact adversarially, and they want to be treated as peers.
Yeah, because I think when people think of women in Bitcoin, like they instantly go to thinking of people like Michelle Weekly and Natalie Burnell, people that are on the PodConf tour that get a lot of attention. Not for any reasons like they're saying anything interesting or helpful, but because they're using their status as a woman to engagement farm. But yeah, I mean, there's a whole army of based women out there, and so I think they just want to keep a low profile, because I think the Sims can be kind of overwhelming at times. Like, look what Lynn Alden has to deal with on a daily basis with all the Sims. It must be exhausting.
Oh yeah. It's when you got the looks and the brains and you mix in the macro. That is it's kind of like I don't know, like a sin magnet.
I mean, I find it hard for me myself not to simp for her. She's kind of a babe. Like, I didn't realize how much she was a babe she was until she notified the world that she does indeed have a left ear.
Yeah. That was a good story. I didn't think we ever see that. It's kind of like the show Home Improvement back in the 90s with Tim Allen. It was like Wilson. You ever saw his face? He's always behind the gate. I just never thought we'd see that ear.
I didn't think it existed. I mean, I don't know. There's many things, that are kind of like out there in the lore, that I think we're kind of conditioned to believing could be real, but like, because they're so mythical. So like, some examples of this include Atlantis or El Dorado. And I would say Lynn Alden's left ear, kind of falls into the same category as like these mythical ancient sites that are
yeah. If you have an ear fetish, man, that's like the Ark of the Covenant. That's like the holographic Charizard.
Well, it's kind of interesting. So if you think about it, so Lynn could have been intentionally holding back revealing her left ear as a way to kind of like develop a competitor to these decentralized peer-to-peer foot pick markets.
It's an ear pictures it's a niche market, but I guarantee you it's underserved. You can get a picture of an ear anywhere. It's like the guy from Big Lebowski. I can get you a finger by 6 p.m., dude. But what you got an ear that nobody else has spotted, that your camera hasn't captured before. That was a little more special.
But it's not just anybody's ear. It's
of course
Lynn Alden's ear. It's a very special ear. And is one thing that was really interesting about Lynn's post about it is that she revealed that her mother also concealed her ear. So maybe this is an intergenerational like wealth building strategy that they've been employing.
Right, like in one of the most successful cultures of all time, Japan. For thousands of years, they bound feet. It's like the Bitcoin citadels. The women will conceal the ear.
Man, it's for anybody thinking that citadels won't work. I mean, think about the revenue stream of ear picks that opens up. Like, we'll be able to sit back and mine Bitcoin, because we're going to be generating our own power in our citadels, and all of it will be funded by low effort activities like feet picks and ear picks. And
that's true. Like once we're able to 3D print mini nuclear reactors, open source in our citadels, we're gonna have so much productivity and energy and all this spare capacity. It's gonna be crazy. I guess quick question, Julie. Anybody ever offered you any money for your ear picks? We talked about feet picks, but ear picks?
People have definitely offered me money for ear picks, but it's not been as lucrative as the feet pick market.
Oh, wow. Well, maybe you're the producer that'll the price will go up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the unfortunate thing about Kaylee is that she has not concealed her ears, so they're like already out there. You got any final thoughts wrapping this up, Rod, before I go over to the fountain boost?
No, I think if you're interested in the intellectual Silk Road, reach out to learn more. And I wanted to talk about some other topics today, but I think we covered a lot of good stuff, so we'll save it for next week. Except for one more before. I didn't want to go without referencing. You talked about a special cigarette brand.
Yeah, I mean, I've been talking with some members of the Intellectual Silk Road about launching Intellectual Silk Road cigarettes that you can only have access to if you're, an actual member of the secret society of sorts. So it's like one of those things that we probably won't talk about again publicly on here, but you'll know when you see them. You'll know that you've really made it if you get to smoke one of these.
Oh, yeah. All right, guys. I'll talk to you next week.
Thanks for jumping on, Rod. See you later. All right, so heading to the Fountain Boost. Our first one of the day is from our good friend We All Eat for 21,021 sats, who says, yo, fuck Haley. Y'all got some compliance cucks for warming her dick up Dick's mic. For having her warm up Dick's mic, sorry. Does she really spit on that thing, Dick? Shadrack was deaf bumping some Bugle tunes at Lake Satoshi. It warmed my heart. Yeah, so, Kaylee and I, we have a professional relationship, so her name's Kaylee and not Haley. And, she finds it kind of offensive when you confuse the two. So I encourage you to refer to her by her proper name in the future. But yeah, I heard the Bugle music was getting played all over Lake Satoshi, and that really warmed my heart and got me excited. It's exciting to see, people just, embrace credentialed music in general, because we need that in a time like this. We need the credentialed musicians producing music, and yeah, it's great. But yeah, thank you for the boost, We All Eat. It was very sad not to make it over to Lake Satoshi. Like, that seems like it's probably one of the best Bitcoin-related events that happens globally ever. And it happens every year. So I hope to make it there next year. Our next boost is from our good friend QW over at Plebchain Radio for 10,000 sats, and he boosted us twice with slight deviations. Well, actually, it's the same comment. Double boosted us. But QW says, just a subtle reminder that Footster is not priced in. I agree. I mean, it's going to be really exciting to see, these markets on Nostr develop. The decentralized peer-to-peer feet pick market, is a huge, huge thing. And, really, like, there's all these, ideas about, like, how to save the U.S. economy from, this debt spiral that these politicians have created by just being generally non-compliant, just printing a lot of money. And I think, instead of looking at ways to bail out the current businesses, which are essentially operating as zombie companies, we have to look at ways to generate new economic activity. And one of the ways is this peer-to-peer market, which is happening on Bitcoin, or using Bitcoin, which is the value-for-value economy, and feet picks are just an extension of that. It's very excited to see, and I agree. Footster is definitely not priced in. So thank you for your boost, QW. Our next one is from Stackatoshi for 10,000 sats, who says, "Hope this helps you pay your taxes. How close do you think the U.S. government is to implementing a value-for-value model? I'd boost the Pentagon if they put my name on a missile and live stream the strike." I don't think the U.S. government is very close to a value-for-value model, mostly because they're kind of foreign to the idea of providing any value. They're more of like a destruction of value model, so they force you to give them money and then they just throw it in the trash can. And I don't think they have any intention of changing that policy anytime soon. But it would be interesting if you could essentially sponsor missiles directly. And I think we could see that be kind of a big thing that grows in the PodConf ecosystem, where, they essentially, directly fund, these missiles in Israel or Ukraine and stuff like that. It's a very interesting concept to explore. And I appreciate the boost, Stackatoshi. The next one is from Fundamentals for 10,000 sats. And he says, so many important stories and nobody else is even close to covering them. Fundamentals has been dropping some alpha over on the Rock Paper Bitcoin podcast, and he actually inspired the Him and Business Ken, their discussion over there inspired the intro song today, and so want to definitely shout them out on that. But yeah, we're here. We're the credentialed journalists. We do it the best in the space, and nobody can even begin to compete with us. And we'll continue covering these stories when everybody else fails to. 100%. Miss Hoddelknot 420 boosted for 10,000 sats and said, "We need more women smokers." Yeah, I agree. It's one of the things that I think is kind of interesting is that there's not very many women vapors. It seems like it's more binary. Either you're a smoker or you're not, and there's not like this middle ground of LARPs and pretenders vaping. And I think, the more people that smoke, the better the world is, and the more women that smoke, the better the world is. So I agree with that boost 100%. And yeah, I think the way that we get more women to smoke is we just convince their husbands to smoke. And first of all, we need, men to be able to afford paying their taxes. We need them to, earn an income and save in Bitcoin in a way where they can afford to pay taxes, and then they can afford to buy their wives more cigarettes. And that's the way that we get more women smokers. 5,000 sats from Orange Mount says, "It's like a glory hole for feet." And they posted a clip from the last episode, which I can't see on my typewriter, unfortunately. But yeah, Orange Mart clipped this is something that you can do to help the show. Like if you liked one of the stories that we talk about on it, if you clip it on Fountain and you post it, all over, various platforms, whether it's Telegram or SimpleX or Signal or Twitter or Nostr, it definitely helps the show a lot, and we appreciate Orange Mart for consistently doing that for us. And yeah, also thank you for the boost. We got 3 boosts from Pies. Heard your boost. I think I was on the Ungovernable Misfits podcast, and just want to let you know, Pies, appreciate the support and feel for you right now with what you're dealing with. Pies says AI Max was fucking brilliant. Appreciate that. Yeah, AI Max is a pretty cool guy. He's pretty similar to regular Max. But he's just not like an actual person. He's just like an AI. The next one said, love the fundamentals, shout out too. And the third one said, non-KYC pre-rolled blunts, this is the way. I agree with all of those. Fundamentals, great guy. Really appreciate him supporting the show. And non-KYC pre-rolled blunt. Yeah, I mean, I think the way to do it is to mix your marijuana with non-KYC cigarette tobacco. So you have non-KYC marijuana and non-KYC tobacco, and you roll it together, and you have a non-KYC spliff, in the form of a blunt. And I don't know about the pre-rolled side of it. Like, you do you. But anyways, I support the sentiment. It's all about the, peer-to-peer non-compliant marketplace and supporting that as much as possible. And our last boost is from Brother Abile for 750 sats, who says, another great show, a commercial from Max, and discussion of fundamentals theories is peak value for value. Well, I agree. I mean, this is what the intellectual Silk Road looks like. We're creating a network of, all of these different podcasters and different individuals, and, you boosting the show and giving us feedback like that, makes you kind of an integral part of the intellectual Silk Road. And, one of the things that has been interesting to me is the more and more I listen to other content creators, in this ecosystem, the more I see there's overlap, not just between, us creating the content, but also our listeners who are boosting us. And so, I see you, Brother Abile, I see you, Pies, see you guys, supporting one of the most important endeavors that is happening right now, which is breaking the CIA's monopoly on memes. Anyways, that kind of wraps it up for the show today. Want to thank everybody tuning in, and as always, as of 3 weeks ago, 10% of the boosts are going to the Samurai Defense Fund, and so want to thank you guys for supporting us, as credentialed journalists and open source memers, and I want to also thank you for supporting the Samurai guys, and also please consider going over to p2prights.org and giving those guys a donation directly. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to and boosting the Bugle Weekly podcast. Your support of the show is helping to develop the intellectual Silk Road. Make sure to post this show on Nostr, and you will be able to see your post in the fountain comments. We will see you on next week's episode. Thanks again for tuning in.
Why does it feel like the bad guys always win? They have tanks and their bombs and their money. The game is rigged, so what do you do? A feeling of depression grows, it's not funny. Here we go up Suicide Mountain, debating whether living is worth the fight. Knowing how the world works is quite the burden. Continuing forward is uncertain. When I was a child, I was taught I was free, stuck in a classroom, bending the knee. The teacher said comply and all will be good. The human soul crushed and misunderstood. But the human spirit can only take so much before you snap and decide to fight. On Suicide Mountain, you weigh your options. Dark night of the soul causes a fire to ignite. Taking the red pill is easier said than done. Seeing the world as it is not that fun. But there is a responsibility to do the right thing. Let go of the fantasies to which you cling. The CIA psyops have power indeed, but you have power to reject their monopoly. Channel your anger and depression instead of giving in. Being ungovernable is how we win. The only way out is continuing forward. It is an overwhelming feeling cornered, but it is a battle of perception, not flesh and blood. There are the forces at work besides the dark flood. When the night is darkest and spooks are closing in, the cypherpunk finds a way to win. When it seems like the whole world is communist and gay, the human spirit will endure to find a way. So come back down from Suicide Mountain and channel that anger by boosting us a fountain. Support the credentialed journalists at the tip of the spear. Giving into the magic should be your greatest fear. The battle is about people having self-respect and convincing them to do what is correct. No politician can offer you relief while the people are embracing conditioned beliefs. Life is more than just struggling and enduring. Finding a sense of purpose is reassuring. Connecting with those who give a shit will force the bad guys to submit. Never underestimate those with the brain, making decisions because they are sane. Defeat only comes when people give in. Fortify your mind and we will win. Yes, times are hard and will likely get darker, but this present's an opportunity to be stronger. We will create good times for future generations. Continuing to fight has serious implications. So come back down from Suicide Mountain and support the intellectual Silk Road.